Okay, well, it's nice to see you all this afternoon. And we have several really good questions that Kathy Reay is going to tell us about.
Sounds good. Okay, I'm just quickly going through all the questions here. Okay, I'll start off with this one. There's actually three questions on this particular form. So the first question is, you describe the depression of alienated parents. What about the depression of the alienated children? How can that be addressed when there is no contact? I guess one of the questions that for the person, if you don't mind acknowledging, thank you, okay, is first of all, how do you know that the children are depressed if you haven't had contact? Okay.
After that, some of their activities, like staying up late at night playing video games until really late in the night.
Okay. Are you able to, do you have contact with the children's school teachers, school counselor? They're all out. So this is a completely estranged relationship. Okay. That's a tough question. Very tough question. Have you attempted to go before a judge or have your attorney get court-ordered therapy for the children?
It says that it was ordered at one time and the father wouldn't let it happen.
Okay. In cases like that, what I encourage alienated parents to do, and it takes a tremendous amount of time, effort, and energy, but I encourage alienated parents to never give up and keep knocking on the door of the justice system. Find yourself, if you haven't already, a therapist who you feel is a really good fit and is very, very well experienced with parental alienation syndrome. Perhaps that person may play an advocacy role for you and help you in going before a judge. I know I have done that on many occasions without any hesitation, where I've spoken and I've gone before the judge. Yes?
The problem is the youngest is 22, the oldest is 30. They're all beyond legal age.
Oh, okay, that makes a big difference. Okay, that makes a big difference. Well, have you ever heard the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink? Yeah. And, you know, when it comes to, you know, someone who is an adult, right, even though they are your children, the honest truth is that even if they know they're depressed and they choose not to seek help, there's really not a whole lot that anybody can do. They have to be willing to get the help. They have to be willing to reach out for it. You know, this is something that all of us as mental health clinicians see practically on a daily basis, and that is that, you know, I'll use children as an example. These are non-alienated children that I'm talking about here, where a parent or parents will bring their kids and say, you know, I think little Johnny or my little Susie is, you know, not doing very well, and I'm not sure what's going on, and, you know, can you help me out? And, you know, so I, you know, do my best to conduct an assessment with the child and do everything that we're trained to do, but that child is not at that place, or they don't feel that they need the help. And like I said, I'm talking about non-alienation here. And when that occurs, essentially the same as when a couple comes to see me for couples or relationship counseling, and there's one member of the party who really doesn't want to be there, but for whatever reason was coerced to be there, therapy is not going to be effective. So I'm not sure if I answered your question well enough or not, but would you like to add to that?
I think that's about what I can say.
Okay. All right. Next question that you have here is, how do the alienated kids feel about the targeted parent after 5 to 10 years of no contact? The honest truth is I can't answer that because it's unique to every specific family alienation circumstance. In terms of optimism and hope, I'm going to read to you. I'm just going to find it here, but I have a letter that I can read to you that is actually in my book that will be coming out, that was sent by email from an alienated child to their parent after, I think it was 20 years. So just hold on one second, I'll grab it. Yeah, no, I'm looking for an actual letter. I have it, but do you mind if I show it to you later? And anybody else who is interested in me reading it to you as soon as I find it after this, I'd be more than happy to do it. But it's this was a client that an alienated parent that I have been working with for approximately 2 years on and off, and he came to me because of the fact that he has not seen, or she had not seen her daughter for almost 20 years. And all of a sudden, just out of the blue, she got an email. And it was really profound what this young woman had to say in terms of how she had been affected and how she wanted to reach out. And one of the things that's so interesting, and I was telling colleagues at dinner that we had the other evening, that I'm finding something very interesting that I'd like to actually do some research on in the future, and that is, although it's not something that, unfortunately we don't see all that common, but when we do see it in these kinds of situations where an adult child, for example, just out of the blue contacts the alienated parent, the alienated parent, of course, doesn't know what to do with all this. They're in shock. I mean, this particular person that I'm speaking of was so angry. And some of you right now may go, what, are you kidding me? They should have been dancing and jumping up and down. Well, no, because, this person did her very best to move on with her life. She was never, as many of you have told me here, this weekend, you would do anything to have that happen. But when this did happen, she immediately went, it was like, going back into the stages of grief and loss, shock, denial. This can't be happening. I can't believe it. Are you sure? Is that really an email from her? Can you read that to me, Dr. Reay? And then, of course, the anger just was insurmountable. And the first thing she said to me is, I can't reply. I can't reply back to her. As a matter of fact, she said, she's taken this long to get in touch with me. Well, she can damn well wait to get my response. And so, of course, we had to work through all this, right, to help her get to a place of feeling comfortable and emotionally safe to be able to respond. So, like I said, it's very unique. There's no clear-cut, cookie-cutter way of being able to answer that question for you. But like I said, I'd be more than happy to share that with you. The third question is, if there is contact after 5 to 10 years, let's say a meal in a restaurant, how does the targeted parent answer or respond to current accusations about past behavior that was vilified but never actually took place from the child or children? Well, one of the things that I encourage you to do is be really calm. Use what's called active listening, where you're just listening to what this particular child or children have to say to you. You can use some thought empathy by saying, sounds like you're really upset, or sounds like you were really pissed off with me. You can use what's called feeling empathy. Okay, that sounds like you must feel really hurt after all these years, or really upset. And the other thing that you can do is, which I would encourage you to do, is definitely, you don't want to deny your children's feelings and suddenly just justify yours. For example, oh, that's not true. You don't really feel upset, and if anybody should feel upset, it should be me. Alienated children or adult children need to have their feelings validated just as much as anybody else does. And although it's quite unlikely that they will validate your feelings, although they may will do so, given that they have reached out to get in touch with you, it really depends on the level of the PAS that was occurring, and again, so many different variables. But don't let that stop you from being a really positive role model to them, and just be there, right, in terms of helping repair that relationship. Another thing too that I just wanted to mention is it's so important not to react or overreact with them. So try not to go to that place of treating them with criticism, contempt, defensiveness, or even stonewalling. Just be proactive rather than active. You may need to say to them during that first meeting, let's just have fun and enjoy each other's company tonight, and let's just kind of process this evening and reflect upon it, and then we'll get back together, and then we can talk more about some of the difficulties. So basically, try and be like a tortoise, wear a hard shell if that were to happen. Okay? Good luck. I hope that does happen for you.
Yeah, I think what I would do if I were in that restaurant is the goal of the evening would be to not get involved in the argument. If the person is picking an argument with me, I would try very, very hard to not get involved. To secondly, make something positive out of this conversation in terms of complimenting my child on something or more than one thing. And thirdly, the whole agenda is to make it possible to have another meeting, is to do it again. So I guess those would be my goals. This is still another new thing.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so the next question I have here is, how do you approach a situation where the alienated parent is able to bring the child or adolescent to therapy? Now, I could give all different kinds of responses to this. It really depends on how this is happening. So is this court ordered? Is this just where it's voluntary and the alienated parent and child are coming together? Is this a situation where the child is in a mild range? Does anybody who asked want to give me clarification?
My context is Child Protective Services.
Okay.
And in that field, there's a certain mandate, and parental alienation is often an element. However, the expertise for addressing that particular syndrome is not necessarily available.
Right.
So in a situation where perhaps this is still mild, if it's possible, because the adolescent consents also to pursue and work on the relationship with the alienated parent, how would that look in a therapy situation is really the question.
Right.
the therapist be doing and how would that be approached? And of course, the second piece of that is how would a person in that situation be referring and finding the correct therapist
Right.
to
Right.
refer to?
Okay. With the first question, therapists, of course, come from various backgrounds. Some do their degrees in social work, and others will be in clinical, and others will be in counseling, and others will be in psychiatry, and the list goes on and on. And so, given the different backgrounds and the educational formats that they learn from, and other kinds of things such as, their personality style and the types of therapeutic approaches that they subscribe to. Some are very eclectic, some are very, staunch Jungian, or, it can be virtually anything. So what I'm trying to say is that, again, there's no kind of cookie cutter way for me to answer this question. In terms of approaching the situation and bringing the parent and child, I mean, one thing I will say is, as I talked about earlier, is if you can, you want to encourage taking swift action. And so, if that child is in the mild range, then, it's much, much more likely that that child is going to easily build rapport with whoever the therapist is, and the likelihood of the therapy being really effective is greater than it would be, of course, if the child is in a moderate or severe range.
I'm thinking specifically with yesterday's discussion, such a thing could be court ordered because that is the mandate of child protection services. Can
Yep.
recommend
Yeah.
that you can request that be done. How would that be rationalized and how would that be explained? Is that this is what we want that therapy to consist of?
Yeah, let me comment on that, because I think there's a real problem that judges sometimes put the emphasis on the therapy for the child, that somehow the child is the one with the alienation and the child needs to be fixed. And frequently that's not what you should do, that the influence of the therapy should really be on the grown-ups, and that the grown-ups should be fixed. And if the grown-ups, if the mom and dad are really adjusting what they do, and I really mean both of them, not just the alien, but that both of them, that will influence the child. And so, if the child is the identified patient, it should certainly be structured in such a way where the therapist sees both the mom and the dad. And in the therapist's mind, the therapist really is intending to influence the mom and dad more than the kid.
Can I just add to that, too, that in cases where it's not court ordered and an alienated parent is, wanting to start the process of family therapy, including combined individual, which is what I always recommend, is that you really, really want to make an informed decision, and this goes into the second question that you have, in choosing the right mental health professional. And what I always encourage people to do is interview the mental health professional and ask for clarification on, what kind of role is it that they're going to play. And I have actually an interview form. I'm not trying to, purpose isn't to try and sell my book here, but there is a chapter on how to choose an appropriate mental health professional, and there's another chapter on how to choose an appropriate attorney. And I think one of the first things you have to ask yourself is, what's my purpose for hiring this person? Okay, is it for individual? Is it for family? Is it for a conjunctive? I mean, do I need a child custody evaluation? What do I need that way? And then, as you interview the professional, and believe me, this is an important thing that mental health professionals are all aware of, is that, we're a commodity. I mean, there's lots of mental health professionals out there, but there's also lots of mental health professionals who do not, as we've talked about, have the experience in working with these kinds of things. So you really, really need to ask specific questions. And don't just ask questions like, are you licensed, or, things like that. And, you want to ask things like, okay, are you aware of PAS? And if so, can you elaborate? And ask them, you know, what kinds of past and present experiences have they had? Have they been to court? And if so, what was that like? What was the outcome? You know, ask them, how would they be able to help you out with your particular needs? You know, and of course you also want to ask other questions, obviously, like what are the cost of appointments? You know, do you accept any kind of health care coverage? Are you covered by my employee and family assistance program? And I also encourage parents to actually use a scale of 0 to 10 and ask the professional, on that scale of 0 to 10, how willing and committed are you to help me and my family right away? And also, besides all that, I encourage you to verify, even when they tell you they are licensed, verify with the state or provincial licensing board, and it's very easy to do. Just go online. You know, if they tell you they're a member of the College of BC, go look it up. You know, College of Manitoba, whatever it may be, because you want to also ensure that there's no issues going on with that person. It's the same thing as a lawyer. You have the right to look that up and find out if they have had any kinds of issues in terms of malpractice.
I think it was more that in the evaluation process, it's identified that it's parental alienation, but to tailor a recommendation for a judge to be able to order it in a more specific way.
Mm-hmm.
That was
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, feel free to talk to me more about that afterwards if you'd like. Okay. All right. Next question is, many targeted parents feel alone, isolated, and judged. How do you think public awareness of PAA can and should be increased so that such cases are dealt with more effectively and compassionately? Well, here we are. This is certainly one great way of doing it, being at the Canadian Symposium. And I'm certainly hoping that Joe and everybody else involved that we'll be able to do this on a regular and consistent basis throughout both Canada and the United States and other places. Besides things like this, I find press releases, although they can be difficult to actually get in newspapers and magazines, I have to admit that I have had very good luck, and it's just getting to know who the people are. You know, again, it's that saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So I think that's one way of definitely getting the word out. I think it's really important that experts in the field take the time and, you know, do their best to talk to producers. I'm actually going to be doing some work with Global News in Vancouver in a few weeks. I think it's their Saturday morning and news, and so it's just going on, and again, it's educating. It's similar to what our speaker this morning, Dr. Abe, sorry, I forget his last name, Warsh. Thank you very much. You know, he was saying the same thing, right? It's about educating and getting out there and letting people know. Yes, go ahead.
I'm not so much thinking about vehicles.
Okay.
More subject. Because it seems that this, you know, if the divorce rate is 50%, there can be a little bit at the mild end in so many of these cases, and yet it's so poorly known.
Mm-hmm.
What subject matter, what approach in order to sensitize the general public? Because you think it would be better known given how prevalent.
Well, again, it's about education, and you know, for myself, I do it by focusing on what the manifestations are according to Gardner, the 8 manifestations, and talking about the levels of severity and how quickly that can, you know, the severity can increase. You know, I think it's all about education.
You know, I've tried in different ways to get the word out. I mean, obviously I have my own project, which is the DSM project. And certainly if that's successful, that immediately impacts how the next generation of social workers and psychologists and psychiatrists are trained, and that will tremendously increase their awareness. But you know, all of us, all the different speakers here today and yesterday, we've done lots, and you know, there are radio shows we get interviewed on, there are TV shows. I think a particular vehicle is the personal story. I guess I've run into a number of people who have either actually published their own story, their own personal story, that they've actually already published it, or they've written it, but they haven't gotten it published yet. So that's really kind of neat that people are willing to do that. And you know, what I've tried to do in the medical literature, and it hasn't been successful, I've tried to tailor little articles that fit the journal. For instance, I sent a little article into the Journal of Pediatrics, and it was just a little vignette. The point of the article was a pediatrician might be faced with the following situation, and what would you do? What would you do if you were faced with the following situation? And it was a little parental alienation situation. And if anybody can help me get that published, I would appreciate it. Because I send these in. I sent a similar thing into JAMA, the journal for the AMA, and they weren't interested. But anyway, I think all of us here are plugging away, and if any of you can think of more ways, please,
I was just
please
going to
help.
say, I just wanted to add, you know, join online support groups.
The other thing, there obviously are a number of,
Yeah.
of websites and so on. Sir, did you have a comment?
I agree with you that the DSM, to me, is a very strategic initiative to, get this on the radar and move society forward. But as I mentioned to Kathleen, I think another strategic way to do it would be to do a movie similar to Kramer versus Kramer, but have a very strong PAS theme in it, okay? Because that would really raise public awareness. And, there's certainly no shortage of cases to create a movie on, but I think that would be highly strategic in nature. You could go from here to there in a very short period of time.
So where was that fellow last week? Was he in New Zealand and Australia? The fellow who climbed on the bridge and in Sydney? And he climbed on the bridge and he said, I'm not going to get off until I can tell people about the parental alienation. So,
Make a movie out of it.
Yeah, because people talk about movies.
Do we have any producers in the audience? Right. So yeah, just going back to that, so besides joining the numerous online support groups that are out there, I also encourage you, I have actually explored on YouTube many videos that targeted parents have done, and some of them are just outstanding. There's one fellow, I can't remember his name, but his has been viewed well over 200,000 times, and he's from New York, and the music and everything, the way he did it is just 5 stars as far as I'm concerned. So that's a really great way to, in terms of public awareness and reaching out, and hopefully too the child or children involved being able to see. I also encourage you to, if you haven't already, consider setting up your own website. And have pictures on there, have videos on there of all the wonderful times that you had with your children prior to the alienation occurring. Post messages on there, post blogs on there, whatever you need to do that way. And even though they, if they don't see it right now, there is a possibility that their friends or somebody else will say, hey, you know what? I happened to see something. I had a parent that I worked with recently where I said to them, you know what, the sky's the limit now with the social networking. Go on Twitter, get your own Facebook page focusing on parental alienation and your story, or MySpace, you name it, right? And lo and behold, their child heard about it through a friend at school. So anything's possible. Okay, here's the next question. If the supposedly target parent does not show any of the negative thoughts typical of such parents, and the alienating parent and kids describe the target parent as emotionally abusive, should the clinician begin to question whether this is really estrangement versus alienation? It's a good question. I have to think about that one. Again, it really depends on the scenario. From a clinical perspective, if the entire family is seeking treatment, let's use Terrence's model that he talked about earlier, I think it could very easily be assessed in terms of what really is going on that way. Who is the person who asked this question here in the audience? No? Okay. I just wanted to get some clarification if I could, so I'm just going to make this sort of general. But I would have to question if a target parent truly believes that they don't show any of the negative thoughts, because I don't see that really being realistic or possible. I know I talked about denial, but denial when it comes to alienation doesn't last very long because everything is so real, as I talked about earlier. So I think more than, and I'm certainly not, going to the place of saying, well, does that mean then that the alienating parent and kids are right? No, I'm certainly not saying that at all. I can't make that judgment. But what I am saying is that I have never in my career in working with alienated families not met a targeted parent who doesn't undergo negative thoughts or feelings.
Well, that's the gist of the question, is that if you have a so-called targeted parent who truly doesn't care less and is unconcerned and doesn't feel anything about the children bad-mouthing them or anything else, if that truly is the case, then I guess you really would have to wonder whether the person is so emotionally distant and out of touch that maybe the children's attitude is justified. So the answer to the question is we're not sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes?
It's not uncommon if you have a very effective alienating parent that all the kids and all the parents will, and all the kids and the other parent will paint a certain picture, let's say of the mother.
Mm-hmm.
And they all come in with the same picture.
Yeah.
And they have already sent that picture to the mental health professionals. And then the person walks in. And they're like, not that way. So how does the clinician evaluate? They're all saying the same thing. Well, either that means that it's true, or it means that it's in concert.
Well, the clinician, no, I understand, the clinician really has to have an open mind
Yeah.
that maybe it isn't true, and the clinician really has to spend time with both parents and really get to know them. And I mean, I think almost always a truly targeted parent feels miserable and justifiably miserable, and you get to that quite quickly.
And another thing too, on talking about ethics, that a very ethical, experienced clinician will do his or her very best. I mean, we are all human, but we will all do our very best not to have any preconceived biases or notions about that particular person that we haven't met yet. Yes?
Have you ever recommended to a client to basically give up and try to get a loving relationship going? Despite all of his or her best efforts, and just gets hate mail, and it's just not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It is my true belief that any alienated parent should never give up. But what I do also believe is that, similar to what was talked about, I believe it was earlier today or it was yesterday, I can't remember now, but when there's evidence that the alienated child is being affected in his or her overall functioning as a result of the dynamics that are going on, then it's time to take a break, and hopefully that child is getting the proper therapeutic interventions to be able to work with that and deal with that. and hopefully get over that. But also, to the other aspect to that question is that I also believe that when the targeted parent gets to a place of feeling like, wow, I am so done in by this and I feel so burnt out and I'm just, I don't know what to do, then you know it's time to take a break. Take a break only until you feel you're at that place that you can move forward again. So never give up. Go ahead.
For me, 5 years ago, after my daughters had been completely extracted from my life, I was at that point such a complete mess that all I could possibly have to do is just to get the pieces and be put back together again. And lo and behold, it actually worked. And just in the last 2 months, I've written this complaint letter to the Law Society, which I think is going to make some, case law, because it was such a shocking and scandalous situation that shows really a failure of critical thought throughout not just the entire legal system, but the medical system, the police, just everywhere, people have abandoned critical thought. And that fact, that aspect, that abandonment of thinking is the single greatest ally that parental alienation has. That people just buy a story that the alienating parent tells without checking into it. And that's been done for 12 years in one case.
Yeah.
And when that happens, the target parent is just completely tied up and helpless. So what you need to do is encourage the critical thinking. If the client is in a point where they're just a mess of trauma and they cannot function, then they have to let it go for a while. But that's not the same as letting it go forever.
Right. And just one other thing I'll add to what you were saying, and that was really excellent what you shared, and thank you very much. And that is that when a parent does give up, unfortunately but true, and there's tons of literature that states the same thing that I'm about to say, and that is the alienated child somehow, sometime, somewhere will say, you see, I knew he or she didn't love me or didn't want to be with me. And so it just feeds into or perpetuates the alienation that much more. So that's why I encourage you to never, ever give up.
Giving up takes different versions. Giving up doesn't
Yeah.
mean to abandon the children. Giving up might be just taking a rest.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you're not going to give up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Keep sending those birthday cards and gifts, and even though they may not be receiving them, if that time comes, and hopefully it does for each and every one of you, that there is some form of reconciliation or reintegration or reunification, that you'll be able to say, well, you know what, I did. Here's my Canada Post receipt. Use things like that, right, where you actually have receipts from FedEx or wherever it may be in terms of sending gifts. You can't dispute what's on paper that way. Yes, the woman in the back in the black and white.
Dr. Burke, we're asking about getting some articles published, like in a medical journal. There's an organization that's international, it's called they practice social pediatrics.
Okay.
Yeah, they sort of look at the child as the center with rights and
Okay.
they look at the whole situation of the child in a system, not just their medical disease.
So that might be a good journal for me to send my article to?
Not at the journal, but maybe they could
Yeah.
promote whatever your article
Okay.
is saying.
Thank you.
So maybe a card that can put you in contact.
Good, I will. I'll do that.
And then as for, linking with other organizations, I'm a lawyer, so all your jokes didn't bother me.
Oh, good. Thank you.
You didn't alienate me.
Wonderful.
But I'm also a family mediator since 2007. And I work on an Indian reserve across the river here.
Mm-hmm.
So we have different issues to deal with, and I
We know that.
We know that.
Find us. Because the only reason I know about this conference today was through my friend who I met in Florida, and he sent me a link, so I'm very disappointed in my organization for not promoting this conference to attend. And there's also the Tibet Family Mediation
Mhm.
organization. They didn't put out a word about it.
Well, thanks for being here and spread the word for us.
Yeah, it'd be good though if you linked up with them and made
Yeah.
a complaint about it.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll take one more question.
I just want to make one point about the earlier question about how do you tell if it's estrangement or alienation when the whole family's on it. One thing that's true with normal kids is they feel ambivalence towards both parents. So if you ask your children as a clinician, how do you feel good things about this parent or that parent? If they only feel good things about the alienated parent and only feel bad things about the target parent, chances are there's parental alienation. That's one way to tell.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And again, you can see where that's that all or nothing black and white thinking that is occurring. Absolutely. Another form of counterproductive thinking. Okay, real quick.
Okay, so what if there's no diagnosis of PAS by the courts, even though there's overwhelming evidence, and the social workers, attorneys, and family therapists have dismissed the concept, nor do they have any idea of how to help the targeted parent or the alienated child if they don't believe in the concept of PAS? So how is the targeted parent going to get the necessary CBT that they need without a referral? And they don't have, say, the financial means to get it.
Yeah, that's a loaded question. Keep looking. Keep looking. There are clinicians out there who are well-versed in this and experienced throughout our country. If you'd like, you can contact me and I'll give you some names of people that I do know. Also, Joe Goldberg here is an excellent source for helping you with finding somebody who's very appropriate. Right, Joe? Yes, and but again, you know, a lot of alienating parents do what's called shopping, not only for a lawyer, but for a mental health therapist who they want to align with them. I stress for alienated parents, you need to do the same thing. Shop for the right mental health professional. We have one more question on here. Are we doing okay for time? Okay. This next question says, how or what type of intervention suits clients that we work with but not live in the Western world? Again, there's no single answer I can give you for this other than this, and that is, in more recent time in graduate school, in both the master's and doctoral level of training, it is absolutely essential to take a core course in multicultural counseling, if you're in a counseling or clinical or social work program. And then for those who are taking specialties in family and marriage, then it's also a requirement to take a course in multicultural family counseling and assessment and so forth. At least the universities I'm aware of up here, I can't speak for the US, but is that correct? Okay, thank you. So that might be one way of, again, when you're interviewing a clinician, is make that one of your questions. By the way, what year did you graduate from school? Where did you graduate from? And did you take any courses in multicultural family counseling? And keeping in mind that in taking these kinds of courses, we learn. I mean, for me, I took graduate school, like my master's program I did in the States and all, but both here and, like you said, down there, okay, the clinicians in their training are going to learn the various kinds of therapeutic modalities that tend to work best with persons from various kinds of ethnic and racial backgrounds. And also, too, if that's something that they really like to specialize in, chances are they're going to take lots of advanced training in that.